how would you describe like how food reflects culture?
Food and culture go hand in hand, right? And coming from a Jamaican background, for me, it was actually really challenging to find a sense of identity within my own culture without eating meat for my entire life. In Jamaica, they do eat a wide array of tropical fruits and vegetables, but at the end of the day, so much of what makes Jamaican culture is centered around meat.
I suppose food reflects culture in that the food that any person cooks is a reflection of all of their experiences that they've had, the cultures that they grew up with being in their household, the places that they've been to. If you can kind of read that language, you can see those things.
Anywhere you're going in the world, first thing people do is look for the attractions and the food. From an amazing night, a meal, that can escalate into like a humongous night out with people you've never met before. It can also be a little cosy dinner for one or two. Wherever you go around the world, I think high up on the list of things is to find out where the good food is.
Food absorbs the energy of wherever it's coming from. If you are in Mexico, it's gonna be spicier. There's gonna be more chilies. There's gonna be more herbs. There's gonna be tortillas. Maíz are a heavy part of it. It's just, you're like literally absorbing what's in that region, in that area, especially when it's authentic and hasn't been blandified. That's what's so important to us as cooks and chefs and restaurants. We have to protect the authentic ingredients and not just use one type of tomato, but use every type of tomato. Culturally, that's what makes something so rich. You go to a place that's in the middle of nowhere and you're like, oh my God, I had the craziest chili I've ever had, because that chili still exists.
I think the other thing that I've learned, it sometimes is more than what people are eating, but also it's about the spices. When I think about jerk chicken, the main flavors you're getting there, allspice, scallion, garlic, onion, and Scotch bonnet peppers, and all these different factors, you start to get this really beautiful flavor profile that shines through. How that transformed my cooking was that I got to a place where I took a step back and just focused on how can I apply these flavor profiles, these spice profiles to my vegetables, to my mushrooms, to the way that I eat, so that I can still share my culture and feel connected. And that's definitely allowed me to be closer to my Jamaican culture overall.
Culture's constantly changing for sure, and Australia particularly, we have 60,000 plus years of history here, but we don't know a lot about it, and we're not taught a lot about it. But now people are starting to inquire and look into it more, and every dish that we're serving today has at least one Australian native ingredient in it, including one that's called kangaroo grass. So it's a flour to make our flatbread, and there's evidence of this being done like 30,000+ years ago, before anyone else in the world made bread. So we have this amazing, deep culture here that we're starting to learn about more. We have a deep culture of immigrants coming to the country, bringing all of their different ideas and techniques and cookery skills. But then we have a landscape that can grow all of these ingredients. There's nowhere else like it in the world.
How does food change when culture changes?
My grandmother's Chinese and my grandfather was Dutch. So I grew up with those cuisines being in my household. And then the way that my mother cooks them and the way that I cook them is not traditionally or strictly authentic because, in New Zealand, the ingredients are different. And for a long time, I thought that was lesser than the authentic versions. I didn't cook that food for any other people. It was only something I'd do at home for myself, maybe because I felt strange or weird about it. And then now I think there's a beauty in that. It was the food of that culture, but through changing countries, moving continents, it's changing as the people of that place change. There's still authenticity around, but the food of immigrants is just as beautiful as the original.
There are places in the world where food is a part of the culture, and culture always evolved. There are dishes that my mom had when she was a teenager, and by the time I became a teenager, those dishes had disappeared.
When I'm building on tradition, I use it as a map. Like, I want to take you on a journey. I want to show you where I'm from. This is where I currently am, and here's a peek of where I'm going with it. That's how I look at it as far as the tradition goes. You know, my spiced curried lamb, I grew up on curry. I also grew up on lamb, bringing the two together. Let me show you the different ways that I'm cooking it. These are still the basic ingredients, the underlying flavor palette, but this is how I go about it to really enrich it and put my own specific twist on it that you otherwise may not have thought of.
We have to like protect the beautifulness of each spot while still getting inspiration from it, but not like changing it so fundamentally that you lose its soul.
It's important that you understand the past, why you're deciding to go off a different path and use a different ingredient or take a different technique or apply different things that you've learned or eaten in different places. There needs to be thoughtfulness and reasoning behind it and not just change for the sake of change.